we're still struggling through it. But in the midst of all this, there's a lot of great work that has been done, and I'm so appreciative of my board for making adjustments wherever we needed to make adjustments. And I just want to tell you that I graduated the first year when this school was built. I don't want to tell you my age, but I've been around for a long time. And it was the first graduating class. We did not have anything like this. I mean, we didn't have TVs this is a cafeteria area, the commons area. You know, we have microwaves, and, you know, we didn't have any of that. So we're so proud of the renovations that have been ongoing. And, you know, we try to save electricity by having LED lights and so forth. But again, each and every one of you plays such an important part in the community that this is a meeting that's long overdue, and I'm so grateful for all of you to be here tonight. Just want to, again, welcome you and tell you that plans are underway to have things kind of go back to normal. We're planning a prom, correct? Graduation, and you know, every day we're making adjustments here and there to make sure that everything's in place. With that being said, I want to give the mayor an opportunity to welcome each and every one of you as well. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you again. I first want to thank Mr. Mesa, the Board of Trustees, for hosting this monumental and probably first of its kind event here in the city of Del Rio, Texas, having all of our agencies and government entities present today. So I really want to thank your hospitality and your generosity for opening up your doors to the community and the community leaders. And secondly, having been a graduate here of Del Rio High School back in 2001, I can remember walking through these halls and remembering that, you know, the smell, as we were describing earlier with some of my other colleagues from the city, it's very monumental that you've refreshed the auditorium and you've refreshed the cafeterium, and we have this modern approach to being a student here at the Del Rio High School. I never imagined anything like this, and you should all be very proud of yourselves and commend yourselves. So I'd like to applaud them first for their efforts to modernizing the high school. It's very much needed, and I look forward to the future vision you have in the other wings. That being said, this is a testament of what can be done when you have a vision for the future. And I commend again the Board of Trustees and the superintendent for the vision and planting those seeds, beginning with the former Del Rio High School and modernizing that to what we have now as far as the administration building, and now what we have here as far as the Del Rio High School goes, but also extending that vision to having various programs in the school system. We have CTE, we have early college, we have very fine-tuned nursing programs here, and also not to mention the dual credit system that we have going on in a college. And I say that because that's the future vision of the school district. They have a long-term plan for the students and the student population. And I call this meeting the special meeting for all of our agencies to come in as a testament to that future thinking and that forward vision that we have. Judge Owens and I had several conversations during the winter event. We've also had very supportive and constructive meetings on the side as far as the entire community goes with our responses to COVID-19, the winter weather, and also the immigration crisis that we're currently facing here in our community. So this has been a broad topic as far as emergency response. The 3 topics that I just mentioned earlier are going to be something that we're tuning in today. I look at this as an opportunity for us to walk out of here with ideas, comments, maybe even some frustrations that we can use to enhance and possibly work through. But as far as detailed information, I just want to make sure that this is completely broad in nature right now. We're not looking for the fine-tuned solutions and the timelines, the specificity of all that. What we're looking for right now is the long-term vision for our community. Consider this the first step of a refresh, of a revisit to our strategic plan and our comprehensive plan. And I look forward to working with each agency and each entity for that future comprehensive plan that we hopefully can kick off with our meeting tonight. With that being said, I'll begin the roll call with the city first, and then we'll go down each to ensure that we're all open for our discussion and our workshop. And I look forward to hearing your ideas and your comments. Thank you so much for having us. Test. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I will now call to order the special city council work session conducted here at the Del Rio High School cafeteria, scheduled for 6 o'clock. Please note that the current time is now 6:11. City Secretary, would you please conduct roll call? You can do it. Oh. Present.
Councilman Alfredo Carranza Jr.
Here.
Councilman Raúl C. Ojeda. Councilman James DeRusse.
Here.
Councilman J.P. Sanchez.
Here.
Councilwoman Alexandra Falcon Calderon. Councilman Stephen T. Webb. Mayor, you do have a quorum.
My turn.
Yes, sir.
That'll work. Can y'all hear me? Yep. Well, call to order. Commissioners Court, determine there's a quorum. Commissioner Nettleton, Commissioner Flores, and myself, we have a quorum. And I know that y'all are gonna do the same thing, but who's gonna lead the Pledge of Allegiance after we get done with the quorum? Dr. Rios? Okay. We have a quorum. Swoop.
Thank you again. We have board member Joshua Orfeld, Ken Smith, Fred Contreras, Amy Haynes, Diana Gonzalez. We do have a quorum, and let the record show that we have a quorum of board members, and that this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551.
On behalf of the hospital board, we did not bring a quorum. This is the executive board present today. So there's going to be 3 members. I'm Dr. Aurelio Lane, Michaelana Hunter, Angela Prather, Al Arriola, and then our CEO, Linda Walker.
Yes, Mr. Orfeld.
At this time, if you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States and Texas flags. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of Texas, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll do the Texas one too. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee. Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
I must have missed that class. I learned that. That's what I just thought. Yeah, I need to write that one down.
So thank you everybody for being present today. And we are now going to go on to the city agenda, which is other business, item 3A. It should be also similar to each agenda posted for each entity: discussion of emergency response and preparedness in the Del Rio community. Again, I did give a preface earlier today as I introduced the meeting and thanking the school board. I'd like to just go ahead and just jump right into the background of this meeting. Judge Owens and I did have several conversations during the winter weather event as far as the planning and the needs for this community. And I want to thank every group, every individual, every first responder, every piece of the puzzle that helped us get through the winter event that was unprecedented in nature. And we didn't have just one, but we had 2 winter storms in the same week. And we also had an ongoing circumstance with ERCOT and the delivery of our electrical grid into our community and keeping that online. And it affected every single agency in the city of Del Rio and the respective county area. That being said, what I witnessed firsthand at the Emergency Operations Center was the cumulative efforts of all the agencies involved. First and foremost, what comes to mind is the city transporting patients for dialysis to Eagle Pass. I saw the county opening up its doors for gas. I saw the school board answering calls for feeding the elderly. And of course, it was just something that I had never seen before in Del Rio history, as far as us coming together in such a rapid form. The only other time that I can think of is the flood of '98. That being said, we do have some opportunities to fine tune and to collaborate efforts. I'd like to introduce the fact that the City Council on February 21st, we held a special council meeting, followed by a regular council meeting later that week, I believe it was February 25th, where we placed into motion and took action to begin the process for long-term planning for future vision, including possible food distribution centers located throughout the 3 districts that we have here. And we also put into motion a joint transportation facility to collaborate with the county and possibly other agencies in this room to have something set aside for us using the old FEMA grounds, which is currently owned by the Del Rio Housing Authority. What we saw is the need for transportation groups to come together to utilize each other's gas. For example, I know that there was, the county and the city needed gas, and the school district had that surplus at one point, and then vice versa, the county had the facilities available for the city, etc. So these are the two action items that we had placed into motion that week. We also placed into motion that same week, with Judge Owens being present, and I forget which meeting, but he was there to support this joint meeting that we're having today. Our Mayor Pro Temp is also extremely supportive, along with the entire council for the city of Del Rio. And we also have placed into motion that same night the cost of generators to help us assist with the maintaining our water supply to the system and to the city and the residents. And we also have opportunities. I know Ms. Linda Walker and I had a conversation regarding the water supply for the hospital system. I think what I'm getting at is just to ensure that everybody understands where the city stands as far as future planning goes, and that we're here to hear opportunities for future funding, joint funding, memorandums of understanding, and anything that we can kind of get out there in the open so we can discuss now and then bring back to our relative respective quorums and regular meetings, so that we can also pass the baton on to our emergency management coordinators, which is the equivalent for the city, and each respective coordinator for your government entity, to fine-tune these plans, fine-tune these ideas, and showcase what we can actually accomplish, what's not feasible, and how we can work through those items that are not feasible. And so with that, I'll go ahead and have each entity make some comments, and then we can circle back. Judge Owens?
Good evening. And again, school, thank y'all so much for putting this on, having a place. The mayor touched on it a little bit. This was an event that was unprecedented. I mean, it was unbelievable. I will tell you that what we went through on our part, I could call either one of the commissioners at all hours of the night. We had some instances at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We were calling them that we needed water or we needed food or whatever, and they were out there. I mean, it's the same thing for every entity here. I mean, the hospital, we had been through the fuel before, I think at one point, and I think we'd come up with a plan that anytime this happened again, we would make sure that there was enough fuel for the hospital, versus y'all trying to put tanks there on hospital grounds. So we had done that planning already. We'd already gone through that process. Roland had sort of put that in place. So I mean, there was parts of this puzzle that was just can't hear me? Really? There was parts of this puzzle that were already in place because we'd had issues before. So the city with their fire trucks, and then the county with water trucks, and the hospital just staying open. I mean, it's unbelievable what everybody went through, and we all have our own little stories. I mean, we had one night that, Dr. Rios called and said, now, we have water. What are we going to do with water? Do y'all need it? And within a matter of, I think, 2 or 3 hours, we picked it up. And then there was some distributed, at the Joe Ramos and well, it was all distributed, but I think the Joe Ramos and also at Verde County Fairgrounds. But again, I mean, the way all the pieces came together was unbelievable. I can't say enough of the hospital, the school, and the city. And it wasn't any one group. There was no egos involved. It was just sort of, we've got an issue, and how the hell are we going to solve it? And it was amazing. People don't understand what is it that we go through as elected officials when something like this happens, whether it be the pandemic, whether it be, the storm. It just, people don't understand. They just figure it's supposed to get done, and it did. Did we have some shortfalls? Of course. Are we going to try to make it better? Of course. But in saying that, I will tell you that I am part, get real emotional here, but I am part of, and just like y'all are, but I am part of a group that you just can't say enough. And when we were out there, hell, you were giving out water and food and everything else. Commissioner, you went to Comstock, you were providing fuel, and it was just a team effort, not only on our part, but on everybody else's part. So I guess, I want to thank y'all. I mean, it was amazing the way we came together. I know that no matter what we do, we will be criticized for shit, but it's one of those deals, and I'll try to keep the cousin to a minimum. But, people don't realize everything we went through. I mean, we had people with no light. We had our own elected officials with no light, no water. We were living the nightmare with you. So again, I mean, I think this meeting is a good meeting, and again, it's just unbelievable. People don't realize everything that we went through. But I want to personally thank every entity, and of course the court that I'm part of. We work well hand in hand, and everybody that we called, I mean, they were there, and it didn't matter what time of the night, from taking heaters to taking extension cords, taking generators. I think we all had generators and heaters, anything that we could find, we had out to people that were calling. We just didn't have enough of it. But I want to thank everybody. Thank y'all so much. Dr. Rios.
Thank you again, Judge Owens. The same thing here, that, when we think about our school children, we think of so many different things that come into play. My first thought was, for example, we have so many children with special needs that take medication, and they spend the majority of the week with us. And so what comes to mind is we even tube feed some of our students in our special classrooms, and we have nurses that do that. A lot of times the medication are stored in the nurse's office. And so my first thought was like, how do we get these meds back to the parents if they're going to be out for an extended time? And then all the other services that we provide, whether it's mental health, nutrition, we have autism in our schools, and they receive services, whether it's physical therapy or sometimes medication that is done by a registered nurse. And so those are the first thoughts. And it came to mind that we need to keep a log of all these students that have special needs, to check on, make sure that they have the meds available. Because again, as I mentioned, sometimes they bring most of the meds to school because we either administer them or they spend the majority of the day with us. I think one very common need that we all had was, we needed some water. And at one point, I know that the Park Service had a well right in front of their offices that they had well water for, just basic needs, washing dishes, flushing, and so forth. But the other areas that come to mind are nutrition. We have cafeteria personnel, but the majority couldn't get to the services. We didn't have electricity, but we certainly could hand out sandwiches and things of that sort, cold sandwiches, for our students that are in need. We have one special program that, Head Start, they have a monthly meeting with, it's called the Interagency Community Meeting. And so they have special people that are providing services in our city, and points of contact, and they keep a log of all. It's a big old book that we have. So if we can't do it, we'll call someone that might be in housing, for example, to provide shelter or special requests that we're not able to meet. And I mentioned mental health. With a student being out of medication for just one day, it throws everything off. They have to be on their meds regularly. And there's so many different areas that come to play, when it comes to our students. I mentioned, for example, it's Head Start that does home visits. And some of these teachers, when they make a home visit, they find out that some of these families do not have utilities, do not have washing machines and dryers. And so this is where the interagency group comes in because they make referrals. And sometimes it's the city, sometimes it's the county, sometimes it's the Lions Club and so forth. But we find the services for our young people. And I think, to keep a database of all the students that have these special needs and all the ones that are receiving services, whether it's, we have people that come from Region 15 Education Service Center to provide physical therapy, for example. And they have to keep a routine, especially if they've had, major fracture and or immobilized. And so that's what comes to mind. But I know that we did have a lot of cooperation from all the agencies, and there's times that we shared, diesel fuel, and I think the time comes where, we could certainly ask for generators, and I've always mentioned housing because a lot of our kids come from housing units that might be able to have those shelters where we could provide the sandwiches and cold meals to them. And you'll see the buses everywhere. I mean, every park, it seems like, of the city, you'll see a bus there with meals if we're still doing that. But it was a special time where transportation was difficult, getting the employees to be able to have, we couldn't have the warm meals because we didn't have electricity and the means to do that. But there are ways of providing meals, such as sandwiches. Anything else that you wanted? Yeah, I'll pass it on to the hospital.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. On behalf of the hospital and the hospital board, I want to thank everybody in the city that helped really save lives. The work that was done by everyone here translated into lives saved. We did lose some patients, and I think that's why we're here. We want to figure out what we can do better, but not to take away from the efforts that we saw transpire through that week. Fortunately, thank God, there wasn't a big COVID wave during this snowvid, what I think we've heard some people call it. So we were able to respond to it. But we've come up with a list of things, infrastructures, changes that the hospital needs to make to become more self-reliant. Pressurized water was a big loss. I was on call those days. It was quite difficult, but everybody really came together. I'm very proud of our hospital, very proud. They really did an amazing job, but we couldn't have done it without the support of all the other entities. So, I want to personally say that I'm available as the chairman of the board. My phone number, 830-461-2766. You can write it down. You can call me. I want to be available for you guys so we can continue these conversations. I want to meet with you all regularly. I think this could be a quarterly meeting that we could get together and kind of hash out things that we can do better. If there's medications issues on the school side, we have a pharmacy. How do we open these things up? So I won't take up much time. We do have a hot wash that our CEO put together that kind of presents deficiencies that we found on our side that need to be upgraded. But please reach out to me if you'll have after this meeting a continuation of conversations on what we can do in the city. Did you want to say something? Or let me pass it on to our CEO. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Lane. I would just like to say, first of all, thank you very much, the mayor and the judge, for really pulling this together. We had already had a pre-planning meeting and really kind of talked through some of the things that we felt we could have done a little bit better and a little bit more prepared for, which is why we're here tonight. I can tell you that fighting COVID all of last year and then going into December, starting our immunization program to fight COVID, and then 2 snowstorms in 1 week. So given the pandemic and the amount of challenges that this community has faced, and every entity in this room has had its challenges, I could not be more proud of what we've done as a hospital and what we've done as a community. when the power went off and when we started having the water issues, the city and the county responded very quickly. We could not have gone through what we did without the city and the county. And like Dr. Lang said, we did an internal review of what we could do better and how can we sustain the hospital on our own. Not that we don't need the city and the county support, because we do, but what can we do to shore ourselves up? And we identified multiple things, from communications to power, water, supplies, food to feed our hospital. So we've really looked at this from a deep dive, and we're looking forward to our strategic planning and improving what we can do, but also really looking forward to being a great partner with the city and the county and the school district to continue to improve. How do we do this as a community and be totally transparent and collaborative with everyone? And that is our goal. That's why we're here this evening, and that's why we're here this evening in full support with our board members. So thank you for inviting us. Thank you for allowing us to be part of this collaboration, and we look forward to continuing this.
Thank you, everybody. And I appreciate everybody's comments as far as introductions and experiences throughout the winter event. A couple of things that I'd like to plant the seed and nurture this seed into a future forest, actually, between all of our government entities is just that planning that's going to be needed to fine tune some of the shortfalls in our responses. I understand, and everybody's really fresh with the winter storm event, but remember, that's unprecedented, and that's really unheard of as far as the time span goes, having been 30 years since the previous snowstorm of that significant size. What we do get regularly is drought, is floods, and tornadoes. And I'd like to also make sure that we're aware and cognizant of that experience as we move forward into the stormy season and potentially hurricane season here in Southwest Texas. As many of you know, I do make it very well known that with the immigration crisis happening in our border, that God forbid Brownsville is hit with a hurricane. However, that hurricane could also pass and continue further north into Del Rio, Valverde County. And what happened in 1998 is a great possibility even in this short span of a winter storm. It could be just our luck, and I know Judge Owens and I don't want to wish upon anything else in our community, and neither does anybody else in this room, but it's a very real factor here that we live in right now. Recall last year this time is that when we had the hailstorm and the windstorm 2 weeks later, and we had to quickly respond to cleaning up the city and responding to all the hail damage and everything that happened last year. That was a year ago. And now we're back in that same season, and we're anticipating another strong hurricane season. And how that translates to the Texas weather and to our local weather is something that we really need to be aware of in this conversation that we have tonight. Again, I understand our passion right now is a response to the winter storm event, but how can we apply our responses and our learning efforts tonight into the also varying measures as far as weather catastrophes in our area? That being said, I want to also touch base with let me gather my thoughts for a second. With the big phrase that I've heard a couple of times from different entities is strategic planning. I'd like to ensure that any information that's presented today, that we do pass it on to our emergency management coordinators and ensure that they are given the direction by each agency here and each government entity here to meet soon, hopefully within a couple of weeks, to gather our information, gather our thought processes and our vision, so they can begin fine-tuning and finding funding sources and collaborative efforts right now. Speaking with Texas representation in Austin and further representation in Washington, D.C., I can tell you that this year is all about infrastructure investment. COVID-19 really opened up the eyes of our state and federal representation, and we're hearing a lot of buzzwords as far as infrastructure improvement and how we can fund these opportunities, including like flood prevention, for example, and COVID relief and things of that nature, which is all applicable to infrastructure needs. That being said, I want to really touch base with what the hospital just started to touch on. If you want to expand on some of your experiences, I believe all the agencies here can take an opportunity to learn and hear where your shortfalls were, and we can continue that conversation, ma'am. Or Dr. Lane.
I do. Okay, so from a hospital standpoint, when it was over, we all came together and we looked at every single department and how can we improve. One of the things that we really realized very early on was our communications were cut off. We did not have great cell service, as you all know. We were in one department and another, and we couldn't reach each other. So we do have to go back to the drawing board and make sure that if our telephone system goes down and if the cell towers goes down, we need to go back to unfortunately, we need radios so we can communicate with each other, because we actually have runners going from department to department. So communications is going to be part of our strategic plan and going forward. The other thing that we recognized was that when the power went off, our generators kicked on, but our generators are old. And so when we really started taking inventory of our generators and realizing their age, that is going to be part of our strategic plan also, is to make sure that if the power goes off for an extended period of time, our generators are up to par. I can tell you that I did have a conversation with Judge Owens. I called that morning and I was curious, are we on the rolling brownout, or are we going to be given an exemption because we were a healthcare entity and we were taking care of people? And unfortunately, the answer was, well, we think we're on the rolling brownout, but I think there was some very serious conversations had, and when the power came back on, it stayed on. And I do believe that there was some pressure brought to bear from the county to make sure that we were taken care of from the power standpoint. So and I was very grateful for that. That really did help us. Without power, we don't have heat, we don't have lights, and when you've got, heads in beds, you definitely have to have that. So that is part of our strategic plan, is upgrading our generators so that if it happens again, or when it happens again, we are more prepared for that. Water was a huge issue for us because we do have not only being able to take care of patients, but dialysis patients. And dialysis patients take a tremendous amount of water to dialyze them, and you have to have a certain pressure in your water to do that. So we are going to be looking at our water tanks, and how are we going to pressurize it and make sure that it flows to the hospital with the right pressure. The fire department, thank God for them. They came, they brought us water, they kept the water going. Unfortunately, it's something as simple as a coupling. The coupling from the tankers didn't really match our hospital. And how does that happen? We don't know, but we are going to fix that. Another issue that we recognized was having to have red diesel available for our generators, and making sure that we have a supply of red diesel. So if we do have to default to our generators, that we do have an ample supply of that, because that runs anywhere from 300 to 500 gallons a day if we have to keep our generators running. What we recognized also was in our pharmacy, our temperature ranges went out of safety for doing IVs that you draw up ahead of time. So because of that, we were having to do IVs on demand, meaning we had to have a pharmacist in the pharmacy, and when an IV was needed, they had to draw it up right then. So it wasn't like we could do business as usual where you have 10 to 12 IVs ready at a given time. We had to do it on demand. We also recognized within our facility that we are lacking some red plugs, and red plugs are directly connected to our generators. And so when you have refrigerators that have very high dollar drugs in them and they're not on a red plug, that is something that we needed to address. And so doing the deep dive into our facility, we've recognized that we have some infrastructure issues that we do need to work on. Food and nutrition services. Our food supplies didn't get delivered for a week, and so we had to become very creative with what we had on hand. And I can tell you that the day prior to the snowstorm, we were having conversations with our food suppliers, and they weren't willing to drive in the snow. It was going to be a huge snowstorm, and we were not going to get deliveries for 4 days. And so our team got very creative, and we did manage to take care of everyone properly. But what we have recognized is that our par levels probably need to be increased. We need to have more non-perishables in our facility. We also need to have more water on hand, because that was also an issue for us, having enough bottled water to not only take care of our patients, but take care of our staff. Staffing during a snowstorm was another issue, because we had staff that could not get to the hospital. And so we had, we deployed some of our employees who had 4-wheel drives, and they were actually going out and picking up our staff with their overnight bags. We converted one of our buildings to an overnight hotel to get our staff in and get them to stay there and keep them safe while we were taking care of our patients. Our emergency department, we were trying to, people were coming to our emergency department to plug in their oxygen and to plug into, and just to stay warm. And I remember having a conversation with the city and the county about potentially using the Civic Center just so people who didn't have power could go there, plug in their O2 concentrators, stay warm, and still be able to maintain their oxygen, because that was another issue. The oxygen supplies in town were being greatly diminished. And so they opened up the Civic Center, a couple of the rooms, and people within the community could go there and plug in their concentrators and continue their O2. We had people in our ER waiting room, but we didn't have enough space for everyone. Our lab, our chemistry analyzers run on water. You got to have a lot of water to run those. And again, that was probably one of our larger deficiencies that we really have to take a close, hard look at. So from a high level standpoint, we have about 8 strategic initiatives that we're really going to be looking at, improving upon, so that when the next catastrophe occurs, and I hope it's not anytime soon, then we'll be more prepared for it. Dr. Lang, any other comments from you? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Much appreciated for that feedback and information. I'll go ahead and pass the baton to see if there's any other deficiencies that maybe the school district had, or do you want to comment?
Oh, okay. You want to go? You want me to go? You want to go? Are you sure? Okay. One of the things, and you mentioned a little while ago, Ms. Walker, that the radios, when the cell phone towers went down, it was like, now what? We're tied to them, and it didn't do any good because we just couldn't talk to each other. It's like almost sending smoke signals. And when you were able to get a conversation going, it was like, well, where are you going to be so we can meet up? Because we can't. And that was the extent of it. Is like, well, we'll be in Walmart parking lot, or we're going to be at HEB, or meet me at the precinct 3 yard or precinct 4 yard. I mean, it was difficult. And I will tell you that this court set aside money for generators for every one of the towers that we have, to put in new generators, because some of them did fail. That we did have generators, but some of them didn't work. So we're looking at that right now, and we've already set money aside for the generators, and our purchasing agent is already, we should be getting those soon. One of the things that we came across, I think the school, we could go get your diesel, but we didn't have no way to get it out of the ground. Once we got over there, it was a 125 amp double pole breaker, and we didn't have a generator that would run it. So we will have a generator that will run your pumps. That way, next time if this goes down, we have I think you said about 4,000 gallons in the ground of diesel. And we, I missed some people a little while ago, and I was sort of going through, our emergency management coordinators, Roland and John. I mean, it was impressive what they were going through, and I will say the screaming and the hollering and the go get this and go get that. But then we had even Roger from the water department, Greg from the wastewater department, and you had Wayne, the electrician, to figure out once the generators came in on Monday, it was like, well, who's going to put them together? And you had an electrician from the city out there 2:30, 3 o'clock at night over in Verde Park at that big tank trying to hook up the electricity. And the sheriff was out looking for extension cords and generators and heaters and just everything else trying to get that out. But I think, the stuff that we're looking at was the communications. We're going to do a better job with our communications. We've already ordered generators. And, at that point, it really, we need to talk to each other. I mean, it's one of those deals. It's fine, being able to talk to the court and the sheriff and fire department, but we need to be able to talk to each other because, we couldn't do that. You mentioned red diesel. You were already on the phone, Angela, with Anthony. He's another one that just stepped up big. We were, you made the comment right now, Ms. Walker's 300 gallons for every day that the generator was running. And you figured, Angela, your thing was, I need 10 days. I need 3,000 gallons. And Anthony, stepped up and found 3,000 gallons of red diesel and nobody could touch it. That was for the hospital. So, I mean, we had a lot of people that stepped up. I mean, it's just a matter of, okay, this is what we need. But, I've got here Del Rio Welders and McCoy's and Anthony, as I spoke of earlier, they all opened their doors to help us when they were closed. I mean, there was literally, we were looking, like you said a little while ago, we were looking for valves and fittings and you were running around getting people to open the door, and you were even going to picking them up to take them to their business so they could open the door because, well, there's ice on the ground. Well, okay, we'll go pick you up. But it was really impressive. I mean, I mentioned some individuals from the city right now. There's a whole list of people that we could give credit to it was just unbelievable. I mean, I'd get home and it seems like you're excited. I go, when you look at what the heck, I didn't cuss. When you look at what the heck everybody was accomplishing with what we had to deal with, I mean, it was just impressive. Again, I will say that the radios, the towers, the communications, we're looking at that already. The generators, we're already ordering those. Food distribution, the court has already set aside $1 million to build another centralized food distribution. And we noticed that, again, we didn't have enough water, didn't have enough food, even though the commissioners were handing out food, I guess, every night. And then right after the storm, I think there was 15 trailers that y'all put together and y'all handed out at the fairgrounds, plus Comstock and Senegas and Verde Park. But there was 15 trailers the next week that came in, semi-trailers to hand food out. Again, the court did set aside $1 million to be able to go do a centralized location. So we're going to do that. The generators, the radios, and we offer our help. We had that conversation, with the dialysis or whatever. And like y'all said, I mean, we're here to help. Anything that y'all need, it's one of those things that, until we end up with something like this, you sort of don't really realize you need it. But if anything, the city, the county, the school, the hospital, I mean, we're here to help, and a little bit of planning is going to go a long ways, and this meeting, I think, if nothing else, it'll show the community that nobody's got an ego. It's we're all here to help. It's just not one group. It's all of us going to be pulling together to make sure that if this happens again, and somebody said a little while ago, which probably it'll happen again, we'll have this other issue, at some point, that we're prepared. And at this point, Mayor, if you don't mind, Commissioner Nettleton, you have something else? Or here you go. You're sitting there.
I just want to say, like the judge and the mayor and everybody else, is everybody did a phenomenal job. But what we have to do is realize that the state is not in a position, or the federal government in a position to help us for 7 or 8 days. So we have to get in a position to be able to provide our community with the things that they need for at least 7 to 14 days. And that's what this conversation is going to do, is start looking at those long-term issues, which is food, water, communications, those types of things. We're not going to be able to depend on the state or the federal government to come in. I mean, we learned that lesson in this winter storm. We have to be prepared locally to be able to deal with those issues by ourselves. There's not going to be anybody there to rescue us. There's not going to be anybody there to help us. So the things that we're talking about here today are phenomenal things. And as we work together with good levels of communication and generators and things in the proper places and water where it needs to be and food distribution, it amazed me that even after the storm was over with, you still couldn't get food in the grocery store. You still couldn't get supplies in this community for weeks. It was kind of an eye-opener that a state as great as the state of Texas completely came to a halt over 12 inches of snow. And it makes us realize that we're out here alone. We're 3 hours from the closest community. We're going to have to figure out amongst ourselves how we're going to put in place the pieces we need to keep this community functioning for at least 7 to 14 days. And these conversations we're having are great conversations, and listening to all of the different agencies and different elected officials talk about going back and looking at the problems that they had and start addressing those is a great start in the right direction. And so I think as we continue this process and continue having these, I agree that these probably meetings need to happen at least quarterly and keep updating each other on where we're at. But we have to look at the key things: food, water, communications, fuel, and put ourselves in a position that we don't have to depend on anybody else for a while to be able to function. I mean, we brought in a lot of trailer loads of food from the food banks at different locations because people couldn't get food. And those are essential items that we have to be able to provide to this community. So I think we all kind of woke up and really learned a lesson from this. And we will have another one. We've been through it in 98. We've been through it with this. We'll go through it again. So I'm really impressed with what everybody did and where we're at as we continue along this process.
Thank you, Commissioner Nettleton. I have a suggestion, and we talked about it before, because I think what Commissioner Nettleton said resonates with all of us. We have to be prepared to provide for our community from about 7 to 14 days. And everybody has gone back and seen what we could do different within our own organizations. But as a community, there's a whole lot of other people that were touched in a bad way through this that necessarily didn't have to go to the hospital or didn't necessarily need from one of our agencies, but the community as a whole was touched. I suggest, and I hope that every entity will agree, if every entity will designate one person of the administrative type and one elected official, and we can have just 2 people from each entity come together and work on a MOU that addresses how the community can exist as healthy as possible, 7 to 14 days. We can draft an MOU and then bring it back to our own entities once that group of 8 people agrees on it, and then for more feedback. And if everybody can live with it, we approve it. And then we know that if something happens again, whether it's a flood or a storm, we flip Condition Zulu, and every entity knows what to do to pitch in to have our community exist healthy for 7 to 14 days. And it's not going to cost us anything because everybody's already, well, it might cost us something at the end. I shouldn't say that. But everybody's already thinking of what they can do different. But if we could put a plan in place so that when it happens again, we just flip a switch and everybody does what it has to do. And all we have to do is every entity go back, adopt a resolution where you will dedicate one elected official and one emergency coordinator or whoever you want to do to represent. We'll come together and we'll draft something, and then everybody will go back, review it, and hopefully adopt it. And then when this does happen, we're already prepared. It's just, I come from the Navy background, and that's what we have. When something happens, you go to this condition, and everybody knows what they have to do because we've agreed on it, and we've even trained on it ahead of time. And the areas that we should address is obviously water, power, communication, food. I think those are the essential ones that'll keep us going, but it'll take all of us to do it. So I hope that everybody will agree to it, nominate one elected official and one administrative type, and designate them the authority to move forward and put together an MOU. And I know it'll go a long ways. So that's my recommendation. Mr. Mesa, yourself or anybody else on the board that wants to comment? You had actually given us one, so I just handed out what you sent us. So I hope we'll go back and take some action on that, and it'll go a long ways to actually put it on paper and have a lot more dialogue. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, that's actually a phenomenal idea. I think that just goes to put into motion what tonight's meeting is all about, to put an elected official and a respective administrative personnel such as an EMC equivalent. I think that's a great start, and I will definitely have this as a line item at the next council meeting, or we have our next one on April 27th. So please take a note, staff, to put that on our agenda for April 27th. And I would believe that council has that support. You have our support, so I'll pass that suggestion on to each entity to see if that's something that they're open to. So, County Judge Owens.
I'll put something on the agenda also, and I don't know whether it looks like we're actually broad enough on what I put in there. David, correct me if I'm wrong, that we could probably set some people up in order to go ahead and get that done tonight. After everybody speaks, we could probably take action on that tonight. Yeah.
As well, the school district has a meeting on Monday. We will not be able to do that since we posted already, correct? So we'll do that at our following meeting. We do have quite a list of meetings that will be coming forward. So after Monday's meeting, we'll post that on the agenda as well. Turn it over to the hospital.
Yes, our board meeting is the 28th of the month, and this will be an agenda item. We do have a drafted MOU that we've all been given. It's got some red lines on it, so we probably all need to really take a closer look at it. But in concept, this will be presented to our board for their action and support, and I have no doubt that we will do this. So thank you for presenting this to us in draft form for us to look at, make any changes or amendments that we need to come to an agreement and then adopt it.
Thank you, everyone. And I think with that being said, that's really what the whole purpose of tonight's meeting was to get that initiation and movement. And I believe that hearing everybody's input at first for tonight's meeting is giving us direction, giving us a plan of action to come back. I also was looking at the calendar just broadly for a quarterly meeting. I'm very much in support of that. And just to kind of throw that seed back out there and plant that seed so we can nurture it, I would anticipate having another joint meeting similar to this to come back and circle back with it after the respective elected official and administrative personnel have had a few opportunities to meet together. We can come back in September. That'll give us enough time to really circle back and fine tune some of the items that have been brought forth today, and we'll continue to have in discussion. So if you're open to that in September, that would be the next quarter. I'll go ahead and ask every figurehead of entity. Judge Owens.
Thanks. No, I think it's a good idea, Mayor. I think it's a good idea. I think Ms. Walker had said earlier, to meet every quarter. So, let's go ahead and get it done. We'll just pick a date. On tomorrow, I'll send some dates out as to when we would be available and make sure that, we can pick a date in September.
Sounds great. Dr. Dios?
Yeah. Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Nettleton? There you
go. By September, most agencies have pretty much adopted budgets and stuff. So if there's dollars involved, maybe we can put something together to deal with some of those dollar issues prior to that, if at all possible, since we're all going to be working on budgets over the next several months. We usually get ours adopted hopefully by September.
What I would suggest to that, if I can comment, is that if we're going to move with an elected official, administrative person, we can technically start having that conversation now, and then formalize it in our respective government groups, and then we can start meeting as soon as next week, for example. But
Would y'all mind having that meeting, say, in August? That way it gives us a little bit of time to
we can do that, yeah.
to deal with our budget.
That'd be great. I was just trying to make sure that we get it in the quarter, but as long as August works for me as well, we're still far enough ahead.
If we can do it in August, I mean, we'll file our budget sort of the last week in September, but that way it gives us a bit of time in case we need to put something in there.
I'm in favor of that. Certainly. Judge Owens, any other comment with that? Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay, I'll pass it on to the school.
Closing and opening school is the busiest time for us, so I'm glad August or September will work for us, but I think we'll be okay in August.
We'll be sure to take that into consideration and not do it on the first day of school. I would hate to burden you any further with that, but we'll definitely make sure.
I appreciate that.
So, thank you, sir. Thank you for that. And Dr. Lane, Ms. Walker?
Yes, we will be more than happy to participate. Just let us know what the date is and we'll be here.
Okay, perfect. I recognize that there may be some comments that want to be made from our respective agencies. I'll open up. I'll allow each chair to have a few moments to have any further feedback from their non-figurehead if they would like to make additional comments. And then that would basically conclude this meeting since we do have some homework for each entity to do. So I'll begin with the hospital. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. School district?
Same. I just want to say that, for some time we've been talking about getting together and planning, and I think this is the time to do it now where we have experienced, an extreme event. And as Mr. Nettleton said, there'll be others. And so there's always the first time to get organized and be better prepared for the next one. So, yes.
Thank you, sir. And Judge Owens, County?
Yes, I'd like to say one thing. In the future, in case of an emergency, I think the number one tool would be team effort, communication. We don't communicate, we don't work together, we're not going to be able to help our people. So that's what I got to say.
Well, he didn't drop the mic, so we're good. Right, drop it. Again, I mean, we've never had this before. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, and our constituents really need to look at this, and that we're pulling together all of the elected officials, individuals that are not elected that you see back in the back, our emergency management coordinators. And I keep looking at Angela over there. I mean, it was one of those deals that people really need to be proud of the individuals that they've elected, and the staff and the individuals that are sort of in the back rooms type deal that we don't really give enough credit to sort of pulled all this together. Again, unless you were there, it's just, you just don't get the full effect of what, trying real hard not to cuss, but of what was going on. I mean, it's like everything that we had, the sheriff the other day asked, what else can go wrong? And be doggone if something else didn't go wrong. It's like somebody needs to kick somebody next time they ask what else can go wrong. It's bad enough, we're all dealing with our own little issues, and I'm sitting here looking at Dr. Lane. We got a perspective, Dr. Lane, of a little bit what y'all go through at the hospital. My nephew came in from Boston, and some of the stories that probably, well, not probably, that y'all are going through. And then on top of all that, then y'all had no power, had no water. I mean, but it worked. I mean, at the end of the day, you made it work. Again, people don't realize this. I mean, I don't know. It's amazing to me, with as bad as it was, that it could have been worse. But I mean, everybody pulled together and got it done. Again, hospital. I mean, just with the pandemic and everything that we're going through, to throw the winter storm on top of that. I want to thank y'all. I mean, you got the little hero signs and everything. A hero lives here, everywhere, and people don't believe that. They need to walk a little bit in y'all's shoes. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Judge Owens. Council colleagues, would you like to say a few comments?
Okay. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I don't think we touched enough on, is the generators. So we're talking about having water. We're talking about being able to use our wastewater treatment plant, right? Our sewer plant was down. Why? Because we didn't have generators. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have generators. So the city's taken on and are committed to buying the generators that we need. We got a preliminary estimate last night, or I guess it was last night, Tuesday night. It's going to cost us about $6 million, the first kind of estimate we got. So we got the big generators we need for the plants, right, for the water treatment plant, for the sewer plants, but there's 17 or 20 some odd lift stations that go along with the wastewater treatment plant. So it's going to cost us quite a bit of money, but we're going to look for some help from our federal agencies, maybe the state agencies. But at the same time, we'll take any donations we can get from you guys also. So.
Just throw that out.
Just throw it out there, just in case, all right? But we can't hurt, right? Ever. So, but we're committed to getting that done. It's been just put off way too long. So that's all I had.
Real quick, we were being nice by not talking about the generators, but I will say something that is impressive for you to bring that up. It's nothing like fixing something. You can't really admit that you can't fix it unless you really admit there's a problem. So as far as I'm concerned, thank you so much. And I know that y'all have been talking about it, council members. Just one of those deals that gonna fix it, So for bringing that up, Mr. Carranza, thank you.
Sure.
Hello, good evening. I just have a few words to say, and it's really sums up tonight's conversation, and I think it would be, the phrase I'm looking for is the key to success for our community is continuity. We're all elected officials here, or at least most of us. So we come and go, but once we set a plan, let's, as a community, make sure that our elected officials see that plan through. So continuity is really the word that I really want to focus on, and hopefully it sticks in the back of your mind. Really, that's all, and thank you. It's been an honor to be amongst all of you tonight.
Thank you, council colleagues, and thank you again, all of the agencies and government entities that are present tonight. I want to first, to conclude this conversation and conclude this joint meeting, I want to thank everybody once again for their efforts for our community and representing your respective government entity and even being part of the administration. I know the CEOs and the superintendent have a lot of weight on their shoulders as well, including the elected officials to carry and pull through, along with all of our county counterparts, our EMCs, emergency management coordinators. I want to also highlight the what I witnessed firsthand at the Emergency Operations Center. If I open the doors to all of you in this room to go visit one day on your lunch break or some after you finish your work day, go visit the Emergency Operations Center and see the investment that the city has committed to before this event. I walked into an emergency response center that didn't even have the computers online. And we now have an operation that brings in the city, the county, and all of the emergency response, including Laughlin Air Force Base, Border Patrol. We had everybody present during the first few days of the event. And I really want to highlight that it takes a community to really support that investment. And this city council is committed to that investment and ensuring that our Joint Emergency Operations Center is functioning. I know that one of the topics that we discussed earlier was radio technology. I can tell you that we have several opportunities to invest in our areas, and those investments for radio technology will only enhance our region. If we're going to be continuing on with highway expansion efforts, for example, TxDOT and DPS will welcome these enhancements for radio technology. So we're thinking not just for our area and our city, we're thinking for long-term investment for all of our agencies that support us. One thing that I really want to highlight is Commissioner Nettleton's comment about 7 to 14 days of sustainability. That's the point of this meeting tonight. That's something that we all witnessed firsthand. When we were cut off from the rest of the world, yet we were still affected by everything that the rest of the world brings us. COVID-19 did not go away just because we were cut off from the rest of the world. Lack of being able to provide electricity and food did not go away just because we were cut off. So I think being self-reliant is something that we really need to get behind and support as we continue to move forward with the planning purposes. There might be some costly needs that need to be met because of this investment, but it's something that we can invest for our future, and it will enhance every single person in here, their quality of life, and all of our respective community and citizens that live amongst us. And lastly, I really just want to thank my council colleagues. I want to thank once again the county, the school district, and the hospital for answering the calls when we called you. Dr. Rios and I talked about food. Judge Owens and I talked about everything under the sun and then some. And I know I spoke also to Linda Walker several times throughout the entire event. But remember, the seeds are planted tonight. We're going to nurture that plant. We're going to nurture that tree. And remember, and I hate to be the first person forecasting it, but something could happen next week. Let's not lose this insight that we're having and the vision that we're having tonight for future planning purposes. We need to be very realistic with our location. We need to be very realistic with our needs. And we also need to be very upfront. And I thank, my Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Carranza, for bringing up the generators. The council took action that weekend. We all met for a special meeting for that weekend. We're definitely committed to fixing what our deficiencies are. And I want to pass that baton to everybody in this room. And I want to thank the pressure that the county and the city gave our elected officials to keep our hospital online. That was a very challenging time. And with that being said, I just want to thank everybody again for coming tonight, taking some time away from your families to continue to do the job that you do and being part of this community. Thank you, everybody. And I will now conclude and adjourn this meeting on the city council side at 7:14. County?
I don't want to go home. No. Commissioners, y'all have any other comments before we close this? Good? Sheriff, we're good? We good? Roland? Good? Commissioners Court is now adjourned.
San Felipe Del Rio Board of Trustees. Board meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
We didn't have a quorum, so thank you for inviting us. We really appreciate it and look forward to continued collaboration with everyone.
Good.